are listening to Up to Me Radio, the best in inspirational talk radio. It's up to me.
Greetings. Welcome to another episode of Call for Caring's The Empowerment Hour. My name is Michelle Bolden, and I will be your guide as we journey through caregiving together. The Empowerment Hour will bring inspiration, education, and resources to our audience of family caregivers. The tangible information provided during this podcast should be used immediately for our caregivers to have an improved journey. In May, we celebrate women in many ways. Mother's Day, Women's Health Month, teachers and nurses who are often women. May 16th through May 12th is National Nurses Week. So it's only appropriate that we start this month with nurses as our guests. Nurses are not only providing care to patients or clients in a hospital, a clinic, via telehealth or drive-by care nowadays with the pandemic, but often return home and still have to provide care for their own family member. Today's episode is A Nurse's Work is Never Done. So we're going to take a journey into their experiences. Our guests today are also members of the professional nursing organization, Chi Phi Sorority Incorporated, a national organization of over 3,000 undergraduate and graduate female and male nurses, led by the motto of service for humanity. This organization is often seen in the community working. I am honored to also be a member of this organization. You can learn more about the organization at chi-phi.org. So now I'm excited to introduce our two guests, Dr. Sarah Myers and Sanjali James. So welcome.
Hi.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm excited that you're here. So we're going to go ahead and jump in, and I'm going to ask for each of you all to kind of just share your background and your current work. So Dr. Myers, we'll start with you.
So thank you for having me, Michelle, giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and my reflections on caregiving. I retired from the VA Department of Veteran Affairs, Atlanta VA Medical Center in October 2019. I spent 36 years there in various leadership capacities with increased responsibility as I transitioned to the various positions. I retired as the Associate Nurse Executive for Geriatrics and Mental Health, which is the two most visible programs in VA. Had a lot of experience in long-term care, was over a 120-bed nursing home, over at the same time, the mental health unit, 40-bed locked mental health unit. I was on the team to develop a unit at Fort McPherson, which is partly owned by the VA, and that is all mental health, vocational rehab services, and a domiciliary for homeless veterans. So I really enjoyed my time at the VA. It was quite an experience, quite a journey.
I can imagine with all that you've done, that's a lot of responsibility. And thank you for that service to our veterans like that. That is amazing. Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm also a veteran myself, which is a coexisting occupation, I guess. I served in the Army Reserves as an Army nurse for 13 years.
Wow.
Achieving the rank of major.
Nice.
Wonderful. Amazing. Thank you. I'm sure we have some history here as well, because that sounds like some history right there. So amazing. Thank you. Sanjali, can you share a little bit about yourself and your current work?
Okay. Hello. Thank you for having me. So I've been a nurse for 24 years. I've done pretty much a lot. When I, first started, I didn't stay at a job, more than 3 years because I wanted to just, get my hands in everything. So I started out as a pediatric nurse, worked at Hugh Spalding, Eggleston, saw a lot, did the floors, did night shift, day shift, got, tired of the floors. So I decided to go into clinic. So I worked in a transplant clinic for a little while. Then I worked in a pediatric GI and hepatology clinic for 6.5 years. Then I got tired of that and started working as a home infusion nurse, where I did antibiotics, Solumet, those kind of things in the home. Then I left that, went back to Hugh Spalding, and was a sickle cell nurse doing the transfusion for the sickle cell patients. I did that for a little over 5 years. Was a nurse navigator for the sickle cell patients at Grady for a little while. And now, coming all around, I am a research nurse with Emory University School of Medicine, pathology department, and my main focus on studies are with sickle cell patients and transfusion medicine.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've done a lot.
Yes, and that's the thing I love about nursing. It's so dynamic. Each of you had your own experience and it's so very different, right? So you can go anywhere in nursing and do so many different things. My background is all intensive care, adults and pediatric, and then I transitioned into the revenue cycle world. Actually, spent over half of my career in revenue cycle and revenue integrity. So again, it's just so many different things that you can do in nursing that makes it such an amazing occupation. And so, a nurse is not a nurse is not a nurse. So, you probably wouldn't want me delivering your baby because I could probably handle the baby, but not necessarily the birth, right? So we have our own specialties that we have and things that we love to do. So you find your passion in nursing and you just kind of hang around there. So thank you for sharing that. So now I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your caregiving journey. So each of you have had experience with, working and then having to come home and care for a loved one. So I'm going to ask for you to kind of tell us about your journey. Who was the person that received the care? What was your role as the caregiver? Were you the primary caregiver? Were you a long distance caregiver? How did that journey begin with your loved one? And then how is it going now, or how did it end? And so Sanjali, I'm going to ask you to start with your journey.
Okay. So my mother got ill about, I have to remember, hold on. Yes, she became ill in January of 1999, and I just became a nurse. I think I was just a nurse like 4 months. And she just really weird stuff. Like she didn't go to work. She stopped smoking, and she's been smoking since she was 14. The house is a mess because I moved out and was living on my own. And just really, really weird stuff. And I couldn't figure it out. And it got to a point where she just couldn't take care of herself in the house. So I was concerned that, she'd turn on the stove and forget it was on and blow the house up. So she moved in with my uncle, her brother, and she just got progressively worse there. She would wake up, and I thought this was so crazy. She would wake up in the morning, and by the way, I worked the night shift. So I had to leave work and go over my uncle's house to watch her while they went to work. Mm-hmm. So she would wake up in the morning. It would take her 30 minutes to take a shower, 30 minutes to change, to fix the bed, and then 30 minutes to get dressed. And then she would come in the kitchen, and she would sit in the kitchen, and she would watch one channel, not change the channel. She wouldn't really eat. I'd fix her breakfast. She'd eat that, and then she wouldn't eat anything else for the rest of the day. And I'm just like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. So long story short, she got progressively worse. We had to end up putting her in a nursing home for a little while. And in the nursing home, she had a seizure. And during all that time, I had to get the house situated, sell all of her stuff out the house, because I knew she wasn't coming back to the house, because she just was that sick. Because she forgot everything, and I still didn't know what was wrong. but I needed to get her Social Security going because it stopped. So me coming off of work, going to the Social Security office, going to defects, filling out papers, going to see her, dealing with my uncle. I mean, I don't remember sleeping. I mean, I don't remember sleeping. I don't remember eating. I don't remember anything.
Right.
So April, then she had a seizure, and she had a seizure in the nursing home. So the nursing home sent her to the hospital. I get to the hospital when she's in the emergency room, and the doctor's like, "What's going on?" So I tell him all this. I said, "This is a 62-year-old woman who, lived on her own, was married until her husband passed, bought season tickets to the Falcons game every year, went to New Orleans with the Falcons every year. And now I'm looking at a woman who looks like she's 92 years old. So I don't know what's wrong." So he said, "Okay, we'll do everything. We'll run all sorts of tests and see what's what." I said, "Great, do it." Then he said, "But I want to run an HIV test." I said, "For what?" He said, "Well, we're just going to rule everything out." I said, "Well, you can rule that out because she don't have that. There's no way she has that. She's 60-something years old, So a couple of weeks went by, and on April, I want to say it was her birthday. I want to say it was April 3rd or April 4th. I went to the hospital to see her, and the doctors pulled me to the side, and they told me she had HIV. And I went, I don't want to say the words I said, but I just was like, "What?" So the nurse part went out my head. Then it came back in for a minute, and I said, "Okay, what's her CD4 count?" And he said, "Well, we don't know that yet. We got to get the results." I said, "Okay." So that changed everything that I needed to do. So I needed to go back to Medicaid because the Medicare hadn't kicked in yet because she was too young. She was 60. Well, she was 63 now, but she was still too young. She had to be 65, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So she couldn't get it, but she couldn't even get disability yet. I had to transfer her no, that's not right. I had to move her money out of her checking account because she was getting her money in from Social Security and directly deposited into her account. But for her to get Medicaid and to get disability, she had to have no money. So I had to move the money out somewhere. So I put it in a I couldn't move it at the time, but I found out that she had full-blown AIDS because her CD4 count was 72.
And so, Sanjali, I'm just going to ask you to explain what the CD4 count is because
okay,
our audience won't know. And I know as we go into lay to caregiver to nurse, just kind of explain what that is.
So CD4 count is a complement that the HIV virus attacks, and it reduces that number. It's the complements to fight infections, and that's just the easy way to say it. Anything above 200, you're fine. Or I think it's 400. 400, you're fine. 200, you're fine. But with HIV positive patients, theirs gets low to about 200. Anything below 200, you're AIDS. You're full blown AIDS.
Okay.
So hers was 72, so she was full blown.
Okay.
So she had all the signs. She had thrush. She had yeast in her mouth all the way down to her stomach. She couldn't eat. She couldn't walk. She had her muscles were wasted. Just a whole nine. Anyway, she stayed in the hospital for a month and a half, and in that month and a half, I'm trying to get everything situated with her money, with her insurance, because she didn't have insurance because she wasn't working, so she lost her job, lost insurance. So I'm trying to get the med going, I'm trying to get the defects going, and every single time I went back and forth to all these offices, mind you, right after I get off work at 7 o'clock in the morning, after I done worked a 12-hour shift, and I got the runaround so many times, it was just awful. It was absolutely awful. I ended up finally getting her in the hospice. She went in the hospice on a Friday evening, and she died Saturday evening, the next day. And and the crazy part is she died in May of 99. In October of 99, I get a letter from Medicare saying that she was approved. Really?
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, that's that
Yes.
January to May. I remember everything I did with her, but for me, absolute blur. I don't remember what I did for myself.
Right. Wow, yeah, that's just a lot to take in as a new nurse, and
Yeah,
just any career, in any new career you're trying to begin in, but especially in nursing, because you don't feel like you get a break from where you work. You're always being a nurse, even though you try not to be as a caregiver because you want to be a daughter or a husband or a wife and not a nurse. And it's sometimes you're forced into that situation because you want to make sure your loved one is okay. So you switch those hats
yeah,
as needed, right?
yeah.
So, wow, thank you for sharing that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Dr. Myers, can you share your journey?
Well, I have to tell you, my journey started when I was in college.
Mm.
While I was when I was in high school, my great grandmother, who was my dad's grandmother, came to live with us in Georgetown, South Carolina. She stayed with us until all of us, I have there are 8 siblings. And when we all went to college, she was placed in a nursing home. She passed away at the age of 115 years of age.
100 and what?
115.
Wow.
My mom's mother. So I was a long distance caregiver with my great grandmother and my mom's mother, who passed away at 93. And 2020, I had 3 people to pass away in my family.
Oh, wow.
So those are the people I'm going to focus on. My dad passed away January 2020. He was 95 years old. He had multiple medical problems, just a lot of medications. My mom was taking care of him. She was in her 90s and passed away at 93. But I found that my mom was really wearing a lot because my father continued to need more and more care. So I guess about 6 months after my dad started physically deteriorating, my mother got sick. My mother came down with MDS, this myelodysplastic syndrome. And it's a condition where the bone marrow does not produce enough red blood cells. So the outcome of that is you go to the oncologist every 2 weeks. And if your hemoglobin is below 7, you get blood transfusion. So the last 3 years of their lives were the critical times that I was involved. Still working, going to South Carolina on the average a week every month. Coordinating their care and having some support with my siblings, but I was the major caregiver. Paying bills, buying groceries. We hired someone to assist because we wanted to keep both of them at home. We had promised that we would not put them in a nursing home. And I'm glad we were able to do that. The care with my mom became very, very complicated, and she was needing more care. At the same time, my dad's physical condition was deteriorating. I talked to my parents and my siblings. We put my dad in hospice, home hospice, which allowed us to have more resources. He had a aide to come and provide care. He got all of his supplies free, all of his medications free. Imagine taking care of 2 older parents in their home.
Right.
We also had, we just had a lot of support. I just surrounded myself with people. I had 2 brothers in South Carolina, and the majority of us are here in Atlanta. So, and they have more responsibility. I'm the single person in my family, and I don't know why people always think the single person has more time. And a nurse, but I accepted that responsibility because I just cared for my parents. I just loved them to death because I would not be the person I am if it wasn't for them. So
Absolutely.
I just made that my big priority. At one point, my mom was really fretting. It was like, well, we need so much care. What are we going to do? my brother and I promised them that we would be there for them for whatever they needed. So fast forward 2018, my mother, even though she was getting a Epi2. It's a pill that they give patients to stimulate the growth of the production of red blood cells. My mother was on 2 medications. MDS can lead into cancer. It can lead into myeloma and cancer. She did not advance to that stage, but she fell in 2018. She fractured her hip, and she ended up in rehab for at least 6 weeks. I took a leave of absence from my job because I wanted to be there to see what was going on. And even though she was like 91, I think at that time, and they were doing all these tests to try to figure out why the hemoglobin was so low. So at the same time she was in rehab, getting all of those tests, she had physical therapy. I mean, aggressive physical therapy every day, 3 times a week, I think it was. And she managed to do to both of them. She managed to do both of them. So my dad passed away 2020 at home with hospice, which is one of the best support services I can recommend to anybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Very, very supportive. The nurses came. He had physical therapy. He had all of the services that we wanted for him. He had. We also provided the barber. He had a professional barber that he would go to. We brought the barber into the house to, provide his care. So all of the services we brought into the house. My mom had some church members, one of them that had a restaurant, and they had home cooked meals. So it was really a good experience. The last person I would talk about is my brother, who passed away a couple of months after my mom. He passed away in September, 62 years old, an Iraqi Afghanistan veteran, 2 terms in Afghanistan and 1 term in Iraq. He came back after his tour of duty, just a different person, severe PTSD, some mental illnesses, alcohol, just chronic alcohol use. He passed away, as I said, a couple of months after my mom, at his home in Columbia, South Carolina, with his wife. So 2020 was quite a caregiving year for me. I am still surviving and moving forward.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing, your experiences. And one thing that between the two, as you shared your stories, is that you all got help, right? Your uncle was helping you, Sanjali, your family, you got aides coming out there, Dr. Myers, to help you. And so I just want family caregivers to listen to that and hear that we cannot do this by ourselves, right? You have to have help. Even as a nursing professional, we seek help because we know that you can only do so much physically, mentally. And for you, Sanjali, it was just a blank because you didn't sleep. You were just going. And so you can only do that for so long before you end up in a hospital bed somewhere else and someone need to take care of you, right? So if nothing else from this podcast, I want the family caregivers to know you have to get help. Whatever resources are available to you, church members, family members, friends, if they come for a second and just aides that can help. There are programs in different counties where you can get aides hours, maybe for free. You want to check with your county resources. The VA benefits, there are benefits through the VA as well that can support someone to stay in the home and not having to put them in a nursing home. And so in my case, we continue to help with my dad. I have a sister who is a nurse as well. And so we put our nurse hat on, but we also just want to be daughters. And so often we go to the doctors, especially for me, initially, I don't even tell them I'm a nurse. I want you to speak to us, me and my dad, as though, we don't know what's going on because my dad is here. So you should be talking to him, much more even than you talk to me, because he actually is the patient. And I
Right.
often do that, redirect the conversation to my dad, because he needs to know what's going on and he is able to understand what's going on, right? And so we do switch that hat back and forth, but even as professionals, we have to have help, right? And so I
We
want
do.
caregivers to know, take the help that you get. And so, Dr. Myers, I'm going to start with you on this question. So, did your occupation as a nurse have any impact on your ability to care for your loved ones? I noticed, as I heard you said your brother was a VA and you had so much experience with the VA. Did that have any impact on how you were able to help your family?
Absolutely. Let me go back to my master's degree education. I received a master's from Boston College early in my career. Master's in nursing with a concentration in long-term care.
Oh,
And I became a clinical specialist. That I had the master's plus the clinical specialist training. I was trained in a 650 bed long-term care facility
wow.
in Massachusetts. They had all levels of care. So you started with, the lowest level, and then they had progressive care in a dementia unit. I had experience in all of those places. I moved to Atlanta in January 23rd, 1983. In addition to the master's, I enrolled in Georgia State University, received a certificate in gerontology from the Gerontology Center. And it was 32 graduate credits. I learned so much about the sociology of aging, normal aging, all of the aging resources in Atlanta, which were some of which mirrored the resources in South Carolina. So my training definitely had an impact on my care. And then you just mentioned my VA care, working in mental health. I have to tell you that when I graduated from Tuskegee, my highest score was in obstetrical nursing. So where does God take you? He takes you someplace sometimes to unknown paths. But I was prepared. I was prepared through my experiences to care for my parents and my brother.
That's right. Absolutely. And as you mentioned, about the VA, again, for our veterans, we so appreciate all that they do. And when they come back, we need to be able to support them. And so whatever resources are available for the veterans, we want to make sure they know that it's there. And so, your local veteran office, there is a pension, the aid and attendant pension allows for services to be delivered in the home for the veteran and a spouse potentially. And then there's a new caregiver program that's out there. I think it's the a network caregiver program. That's also another type of program which they can get hours for having an aide in the home. So I ask our veterans to look into that, call the VA and see what type of services that can support you and your loved one to stay in the home, because we want to be able to serve them like they've served us for so many years, right? And then Sanjali, I'm going to ask you the same question. How did your experience help? Did it have any impact in your caring for your loved one?
With my mom, like I said, I was a brand new nurse. So I think I learned trial by fire. I think that's the best way I can say it, because I didn't know, there was a lot of things I didn't know. I had the book knowledge, but the real life knowledge is a whole different thing. It helped some because I understood what the doctors were telling me, but I think my biggest challenge was just navigating her through the health system to get the things that she needs and all the roadblocks that I got. That's what sticks out to me the most. Her care was, in the hospital was fine. The nursing home, not so much. As a matter of fact, that nursing home has since been shut down by the state. They were not a great nursing home. So I'm glad she was only there for like a couple of weeks. But that was my learning. Now I have to say, I did I did feel like I helped more when my uncle got sick. And this is the same uncle that took care of my mom.
Okay. Okay.
And I helped my aunt with him because he ended up, he had horrible diabetes, so much so that he lost both of his legs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
And, yeah, and he was bedridden, and then dementia kicked in. So he was something else. That dementia is something else.
Yes.
It teaches you a whole new thing.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can say it. You learn a whole lot more stuff with dementia.
Right.
So helping her with him, with the knowledge I had, because he passed away in 2016, so 2013. So I'm a more seasoned nurse, so I'm able to really kind of help her more with him.
Sure.
Because I wish we had this when she was being the caregiver, because she took care of him before she took care of herself.
Right.
And we kept telling her, he's not going anywhere. Do what you have to do, because she has diabetes too.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, take care of yourself. You eat, get your insulin in, and then you can deal with him. He's not going anywhere.
Right.
But she wouldn't do that. She'd take care of him first. And then by the time she's ready to take care of herself, her sugar is either up or down.
Right. And that's what we do as family caregivers, whether you're a nurse or not. We tend to take care of them first and then not take care of ourselves. And so that's what we want to push, is self-care is so important. And the basics of taking your medication, you going to the doctor, maybe schedule appointments where you both can see the doctor at the same time, right? So that is convenient.
Yeah.
But to be able to do those things for yourself. And as you talked about navigating through everything, whether you're a nurse, a lawyer, a doctor, it doesn't matter. Everyone has to go through that process of Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare. There is just no easy way, regardless of what your title is, of how you get through that process, right? And so it can be challenging to do that. And so reaching out to resources like state resources, your area aging agencies are really important to kind of maybe navigate through that as well. But to kind of get some ideas of what to do, reaching out to the Medicare providers, the insurance plans can sometimes help you and give you some guidance as to how to get through that. My understanding is, as you're preparing to turn 65, you get information from the government about Medicare, your whole booklet as to how you plan your Medicare. So you probably want to take time to do that for your loved one and for yourself as you get ready to enter that age. And so we all have to navigate that system. And, as a nurse and a family caregiver, we're wearing so many hats, but the hat that we want to wear is that relationship with that loved one. So can you share maybe a memory that you had with your loved one that you enjoyed, that you both had a memory together? Because we focus on so much of the challenges and not enough of the good times. And it can be such a wonderful journey when we're with them. So can you each share a memory of something that you remember that touched the two of you? Dr. Myers, I'll let you go first.
I have so many memories. I guess the one that sticks out in my mind is Mother's Day. On a Mother's Day years ago, my mom, I'd always go home on Mother's Day and take the gifts from everybody else, and we'd have a special dinner. This one particular time, after dinner, we went down to the river walk. We have a river walk. The stores downtown back up into a river walk, similar to San Antonio, but not as fabulous. And my mother and I went into the park. We both like butter pecan ice cream. We went into the park. I got the ice cream. We went into the park. And we just sat down. We just had the loveliest time. She was telling me about what it was like growing up. Her dad was a Baptist preacher, and of her three sisters, she was the one that always went with her dad. She was just very close to him. Then we started talking about, she said, your dad and I had a conversation of what we're going to do if one of us leaves the other. And I had been planning to have that conversation, but I didn't want to just put myself out there, but she
Oh,
brought it
wow.
up. And I was really glad she did. So I said, well, how did that go? She said, well, I told him, if he dies before me, I'm going to sell the houses and I'm coming to Atlanta to live with you, which is what I wanted her to do.
Wow.
So then I said to her, I said, well, what about daddy? She said, well, that's another story we have to work on. She said, I told him the same thing. She said, you have 2 boys down here in South Carolina and they're not going to take care of you like the girls. And I want you to go to Atlanta with Jean. That's my nickname. And I asked my mom, I said, well, what did she say? What did he say? She said, he didn't say nothing. And you'd have to understand that my dad is very stubborn.
Okay.
So I told my mom, I said, well, you're going to have to revisit that. I said, you're going to have to ask him, go back and revisit that. So they came to Atlanta to visit. Actually, it was for my nephew's graduation. And my dad said, he was sitting on my little porch at my ranch house and I was still working. I came and pulled up in the driveway and he said to me, he said, I could really live here. I could live here in Atlanta.
Slowly but surely it worked, right? Slowly
Yes.
but surely it worked. That's
So
great.
with my dad, another story, the second story is so humorous. I was at home in South Carolina doing one of my regular 2-week visits. My dad at that time was walking with a walker. So in the middle of the night, I heard the footsteps and the walker pass my bedroom where I was sleeping, and he went toward the den in the kitchen. And I was just so curious. I got up and I was like, what is he doing in the kitchen? So when I got to the kitchen, he had the refrigerator door flushed back to the wall. I said, Daddy, I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I was just hungry. I got up, made me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I said, can I help you? He said, well, you can pour me some milk. So not only did I pour him the milk, imagine sitting in the den at 3 a.m. in the morning having peanut butter and jelly sandwich and milk with my father.
Oh, that is great. I love it. Awesome. Thank you. Sandra Lee.
And so I don't have like like a specific memory. My memories are more, sporadic. I remember my mom enjoying the Falcons, as awful as they were, even back then. But she loved them. She bought season tickets. She went to the game. She went to New Orleans. I do remember one time I bought her a jacket, Falcons jacket. And I mean, it had the emblem and ribbons. I mean, it was it wasn't, and it was white. It was a Falcons jacket. And I was like, Mom, please don't wear this to New Orleans because I don't want you getting beat up in New Orleans. She's like, I'm wearing it to New Orleans. I don't care. This is my jacket. I was like, yes, ma'am. And your jacket.
That's right.
Oh, and then I think the 2 biggest things for me with her is her seeing me graduate from college twice. I have a bachelor's in biology, and she saw me graduate with that one, and then she got the chance to see me in my pinning ceremony and get my nursing degree. I think those 2 things really made her proud because
Wow.
I'm an only child, and
Okay.
she wasn't able to go, finish college, and for her daughter to do it twice,
Yes.
I think that really touched her. So those are things I remember.
That's awesome. And the memories that you share aren't, big gifts or places you went on these fancy trips. It was simple conversations,
Yes.
just gestures that were just the most impactful thing. And so that's what we just, for our caregivers, just to know that simply just take a few minutes, just stop doing things and eat a meal with your loved one, or just listen to their favorite record or your favorite record or song, or, just be still. And it's just in those moments that only do you enjoy that moment, but you learn things. Just like Dr. Myers, you were afraid to have that conversation about what the end would look like, and your
Yep.
mom brought it up. How powerful is that? Because that's a
did.
hard conversation to have,
She did.
but
She
it's
did.
also
Yeah.
one that we must have as well. So the time is now to have that conversation so you can honor their wishes. And those are the same conversations that I love with my dad. Just sit and listen. He has the best stories ever. And I just listen to his stories and learn and laugh. So that is just wonderful. And so I tell you, this time has flown by as it normally does. And so I'm going to ask for you all to share with us maybe 2 actions that you recommend the caregivers take after listening to this podcast. So maybe something you learned through your journey or through your career that you would tell the family caregiver to do to make their journey better. And I'll start with you, Sanjali.
Take care of yourself. Because if you don't, you won't be there to take care of your loved one. Just take care of yourself. Go to your doctor's appointments, take your medications, eat, do all of that. Your loved ones, 10, 15, 20 minutes out of your day to take care of you, do that. Also, if you get family members that can watch over, if your family member that you're taking care of is at the house and you need someone to watch them because you need to just go out and breathe for a minute, please do that. Do that because you will go crazy. Because my aunt almost did. And I don't know how else to say it, but if you have to do Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, get some help with that. I don't know how I did it, and I did it with no help because no one can help me with it. So I did it by trial by error. It didn't help much, but find someone to help you with that because it is a nightmare of red tape.
Thank you.
Those are my 2 things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Myers.
So it's interesting that Sonia mentioned too the same things, and I will just repeat: take care of yourself. To the point that one time I was in South Carolina, one of the things I did was I told my mom to do that even when she was taking care of my dad, and I had scheduled her appointments at the nail shop and a massage every 2 weeks. I remember one time I went and I didn't have time to take care of myself in Atlanta. So I took my mom and my dad. My dad, I have a picture of my dad sitting at the counter getting his nails done.
Awesome.
Take care of yourself and bring in the support. There's no way I could have taken care of my 2 parents in their home about 50% of the time without any help.
Right.
One of the things I'd also like to mention is the Alzheimer's Association in South Carolina, as it is throughout the United States. They do provide respite care. And we did have someone from the Alzheimer's Association to come in a couple of times during the week, a couple of hours during the week. So taking care of yourself is important as you continue to take care of others.
That's right. That's great. So you mentioned about the Alzheimer's Association. Is there any other website, social media, anything that you would recommend that the caregivers follow as well that may be helpful?
I would recommend the AARP. Their website, they have a ton of information. They even have stuff on caregiving.
Yes.
There's just lots of tools on there. If you become a member, it's worth it. It really is worth it.
Yes, absolutely.
They produce a newsletter with just tons of information about fraud alerts for older people, not to be scammed, a lot of stuff about Medicare, Medicaid.
Yes.
They address a lot of those things in their newsletter. So that to me proved to be a very good resources for my parents as well.
Great. Sanjali, did you want to add any websites, resources that may have been helpful to you?
Not offhand.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't think of anything offhand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, AARP is great, the VA, and I will say that our previous series, Call for Caring on Purpose, has all of those representatives there, to include Medicare, Medicaid, ARP Georgia is one on those episodes, attorneys about how to do some of the living wills and talk about what they want to do for the future. So if you have not listened to those previous episodes in the other series, I would recommend listening to those, because those give a lot of great information about how to address some of those questions as well that we just talked about in the resources. So I want, yes.
Michelle, there's one other thing I want to say. The VA has hospital, home-based primary care. They come out to the house. That was one of the programs I was responsible for. So that's a team of people that will go to the home, and the goal is to keep the veteran in their home longer. Depending on the needs of the veteran, you may have a physical therapist, a pharmacist, occupational therapist, whatever is needed in the home. That's a great program.
Absolutely. And that's the home-based program. And they can call their local VA office to get more information on that. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And Michelle, you just kind of reminded me of something. Get a living will, get a living will, get healthcare power of attorney, get all of that. With my mom, I realized I needed that, and so I have that. I have it all laid out on what I want done, who I want to do it. Get that.
Yes, absolutely.
That's really important.
Absolutely.
That's a good idea. Yes.
And again, that information is in our last series as well. And so thank you all so much. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I'm sure someone learned something from this conversation today. And I want to wish you all a very happy Nurses Day week as we come into the month of May. And so, you know, it's very difficult to do multiple things. And when you're in nursing, you see that all the time and have to come home to do that as well. It can be a challenge, but as we talked about, it can also be a blessing. And that's what we often have to look at things as a blessing. And sometimes when you need a break, your loved one may need a break from you as well. So it's okay to ask for that help and to give both of you a break. So, and you know, this is Nurses Week that's coming up. So I am going to ask our listeners to leave maybe a thank you note in the comment section of today's episode, and send a note to a nurse who you encountered, who made a difference in your life, your loved one's life. And so let's show some appreciation for these heroes who are nurses. So again, thank you all so much. And if you want to learn more about this awesome professional nursing organization, Chi Eta Phi Sorority Incorporated, again, you can visit chietaphi.org. The Empowerment Hour is presented by Call for Caring. Our organization supports caregivers through resources like today's podcast, expos, courses, and grants. You can learn more or donate to Call for Caring at callforcaring.org. Today's episode can be heard on uptomeradio.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and viewed on YouTube via the Call for Caring channel. We hope that today's episode of the Empowerment Hour has met our goal to educate, elevate, and empower caregivers during their caregiver journey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.